What's up, guys? Welcome back to Boost Brothers Garage. In this episode, we are throwing the 944 up on the lift. First time we're using the lift. We're excited about that. And we're gonna mess around with fitting the wheels and figuring out exactly what front spacing, back spacing, etc. we need. Stay tuned. We got a scissor lift, people. How awesome is that? Well, we found some things out. We pulled the front wheel off and we were just messing around with brakes. Thomas owns a company called Endurance Racing Products, and they make brake rotors with aluminum hats, lighter weight for P cars. And I was just trying to get his opinion on what I should do about the brake rotors, and come to find out, the original owner had installed the rear calipers on the front, and the front calipers on the rear. So right now we are getting ready to pull these front calipers off, and then we'll get back up to the front of the car and we can start test fitting. He's got an extra rotor here that we're going to try, and once we start testing all of that stuff, then we can throw the wheel itself on and start to figure out all our measurements for it so that I can get lips and barrels on order. Now that we've got the brakes off, we went ahead and looked at the part number on this caliper. We pulled it up online, and it is indeed a Boxster S front caliper. We've got the Cayman sitting here, and I put it up next to the Cayman, and it seems to be identical to the Cayman S as well, so 987, 986, whatever. The adapter blocks are incorrect.
They're incorrect to the car only because there's a mismatch between the late offset and the early offset, as well as I think one of the adapter blocks was a little too far inset because somebody was going to try to adapt like a 911 rotor to the caliper, and it's just not a good fitment. So I think they were trying to make it work with what they had, but it's definitely off.
We're gonna make it work with the right things,
yes,
instead of just what we have. So we're gonna try to at least get it sitting in its proper place, so that we can go ahead and mess with the wheels, and then Thomas and I can put our heads together on exactly what we want to do as far as a rotor. We'll end up using his ERP rotors, so it'll be an aluminum hat, but we'll have to decide what size ring we want.
Yep.
Or it's going to be 320.
It's actually probably going to be a 320 millimeter ring, is my guess, only by looking at it. But in the back of my car, I had some old 981 Cayman S GTS rings and hats that I've just had sitting around. You're going to notice that there's a little bit of surface rust because they've been sitting here. But nonetheless, these would be a good mock-up. The only difference is really the width of that ring.
Yeah, we had to take the pads out because...
So the beauty of it is it will show us around about where our depth is. The only downside is, again, we won't fit on it because the stoppers won't let us see it. But what we did do is we bolted in place and looked at it and noticed that the outside diameter will fit with this caliper. We'll do some more measurements and come up with the right ring. But nonetheless, good news is we will have a good fitment. The downside is we're going to have to change a lot of things that were with the car. The good news is we have the calipers. I've got a good solution for the rings and hats. And yeah, so we'll go from here.
We have this bolted in what we believe is a proper place for it. So I'm going to take this and put it on backwards and get an idea. Let me grab the camera here. These mounting blocks get us close to where we want to be, but it's a little too shallow.
It's a little too shallow. What you can notice is the pin that holds the brake pad in. It's too far inset, so the pin would actually be colliding with the rotor. But the good news is what we can do is we can actually move this caliper out, and I've got it just barely. The bolt just started, so that way it'll hold us straight. But it will let me see about what depth I need, and we'll end up getting a measurement here off the center line of the hub to the outside of the rotor. And that'll tell me exactly what my blocks need to be for mounting. I think it'll look good with these reds underneath a nice big wheel, nice big rotor. It's going to be pretty good looking.
We've got the caliper where we believe it needs to go now. It turns out it was, what, 4 washers off?
We just made some spacers with some washers just to get the caliper out where we think the spacing needs to be. This will let me just do some real quick mock-up. I take some measurements now, and yeah, now we can actually come up with a good hat design, ring design, and then a spacer for the caliper here. We're going to be golden.
Now that the caliper is in what we believe is really close to where it's going to be, we can test fit the wheel. You're probably saying to yourself, hey, you're an idiot, there's no rotor on there, and your back spacing is going to be off. And you would be right, except the center bore on the wheel isn't quite big enough. So we are about 3 mils away from the hub face of the wheel being able to touch the rotor anyway. So the dust cap is acting as our rotor at this point, and we know that we're 3 mil difference. So what we're gonna do now to test fit these wheels, I'm taking my new Kinesis K27 centers, and I'm taking the lips and barrels from the old K57 setup. So this is the original rear wheel from a 944, and this is using a 3.5 inch lip and a 5.5 inch barrel. So this is a 9 inch wheel. This is not exactly what I want. I want at least a 9.5 because I want to run 275s, and I want to run 275s to make sure that I can get the tires that I want. Nitto NT01s or Toyo R888s. We're in pretty good shape thus far. The caliper placement with the wheel is perfect. We have just enough caliper clearance. We're going to be able to run the 320 mil discs, which is a pretty good sized disc for an old 944. We're going to have way too much grip and stopping power for this factory normally aspirated engine, but once I swap in the turbo motor, it'll even itself out pretty quickly.
It's gonna be a good switch. Let's just put it that way. The spacing of the caliper is pretty much perfect. I wish it was more center in the wheel, but it is almost perfect with the top here of the center. So we have plenty of clearance. When that wheel flexes at speed, which for those of you that don't know, wheels flex a lot at speed. It's gonna be really, really nice. Good clearance for us.
The other thing I want to show you real quick, we now know that the 3.5 inch lip is perfect. If you look,
Oh,
yeah,
and Thomas doesn't do that.
that is our fitment, which looks good. We might run a real small spacer. With the tires on there, depending on how much camber we have and how much the tires poke out, it's going to be pretty close to right here. But like I said, I do want to run a little wider wheel. I actually would love to run a 10 inch front wheel. I don't know that that's going to be possible, but I'm happy with this right now. The question is, this isn't quite what we have ride height set at right now, but I actually believe where this is sitting is proper ride height. We had it set too low. So I think this is exactly where it's gonna sit at ride height. I think I'm happy with a 3.5 inch lip, which is great. It means I don't have to buy new lips for the front. I'm broke, so that's awesome. Now, we need to figure out how much wider barrel I can fit on here to see if I can do a 9.5 or a 10 inch wheel instead of a 9 and run the 275s like I want to.
So everything that limits you in the ability to run an inner barrel that's deeper, it has to do with two things. Rubbing on your coil, because it's usually the closest thing to your tire. And then the second thing is turning radius. So when you turn and you get close to the lock on both the right and left hand turn, does it rub the inner fender well on either side? Right now, the way this is positioned with the coils, it's actually really nice in the fact that you can't see this, but on the camber plate, it's set at about -2 degrees. It'll probably fall somewhere in that -1.5 to 2 degrees when it gets into track setup, so that'll probably work out just fine. However,
we've got about 4 fingers of clearance in between the wheel and the coil right now.
Yep. So that's good. The one thing that camber does do when you go negative is it makes the top of the tire on the inbound turn, or whenever the tire goes inbound, it makes it a little closer to your fender well. So we'll have to get some tires and test it, but right now I believe it'll probably work out that he could go negative with a barrel at least another inch or two.
Which I don't want to do too. If anything, a full inch, but I have a lead on a set of 6-inch barrels. These are 5.5, so I know for certain that I can do an extra 1/2 inch, and a 9.5 inch wheel and a 275 works well. I think a 10-inch wheel is ideal for 275s, but you can definitely run them on a 9.5, and it's not like they're, you know, falling over the edge of the wheel and you're gonna have issues with the sidewall not being properly loaded. So worst case scenario, I add a 1/2 inch. Best case scenario, I add an inch, and I think either way, we've got the clearance for it.
Absolutely.
We turned it both ways, and up here, it's gonna be pretty close with the tire, depending on ride height and how much suspension travel we have. But it's a non-structural part of the inner fender. It's where the snorkel comes through for the factory airbox. So to cut that out on each side is no big deal. The other side is where the windshield washer reservoir sits. And
yeah.
Obviously we're not gonna need that anymore either.
That's just added weight. We're gonna install lightness, as Colin once said.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna find me some 1-inch deeper barrels. I'm gonna have me a 10-inch front wheel with 275s, which is aggressive and I like it. So that's it for this one, guys. Soon we'll have the rear suspension installed and we can test fit those wheels. That's gonna be interesting. I feel like we could end up with a pretty massive lip based off the additional width. I think that the barrel, because it was designed for the factory car, I think the barrel is probably gonna be fine, and we're just gonna add all of our width on the lip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's gonna be a lot. I think that could end up being a 6 or 7-inch front lip. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. This was a little tech heavy, but I appreciate the insight from Thomas. He schooled me on some things, and it's always nice to have someone a little more knowledgeable than you to show you the ropes. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.